So we have a fun new thing we're doing this year. We're working with a product called Kraft Tex. Let me see if there we go, Kraft Tex. And it's basically a craft paper that you can wash, you can sew through, you can do all kinds of things. And so we're using it for applique. And as you can see, it looks a little bit like leather, and it kind of feels like a really thick paper, but it cuts real easily, it sews real easily, it can be washed. So we're using it in our appliques. So before you can do your applique, you need to go ahead and print one of your patterns. So we're going to do the pineapple. And you need to check your 1 inch and make sure it actually measures 1 inch so it prints the correct size. Then you're going to cut out your pattern, which I've done here. Cut out my little patterns. And then you're going to take them and you're going to place them on the right side of the Kraft Tex and trace them and cut those out. So we have our little patterns ready to go. So now we'll go ahead and take our file to the sewing machines and stitch this out. So I'm at the sewing machine and I've gone ahead and hooped up a sticky paper because if you were going to do your wrap, that's what you would use. Today I'm just going to stitch it on a piece of fabric because I'm going to use it in a greeting card. So I'm still going to use the sticky paper, and I finger press to find the center of my fabric. So I'm just going to stick it in there, get it centered the best I can. And place the hoop on my machine and we're ready to stitch. So step 1 of the Kraft Tex and the applique pattern is to actually stitch a placement stitch on your sticky paper. I've gone ahead and used that step 1 just to hold my fabric down because, like I said, I'm going to use this on a greeting card. It just gives it a little extra stability. So with water-soluble thread, you'll stitch step 1. And now step 2 is also water-soluble thread, and it's going to stitch the placement stitch for the bottom of the pineapple. Little hard to see, but hopefully you can. So this is my pattern just to show you what's going to happen here. Is I went ahead and cut my Kraft Tex out of using this pattern. So that's going to fit beautifully. And here is what my Kraft Tex will look like. So now to hold that down, I highly recommend using one of these Fons and Porter glue pens. You can see my dog chewed on the bottom of this one, but it still works great. And they have refillable glue. These little glue cartridges come out, so they're refillable. So I love that. So I'll just put a little bit of glue on the back, and then we'll just turn this over, and we're going to place that right inside that stitching line. And probably you won't really see the stitching line once you get it on there. So get that stuck down really nice. And the next step on the pineapple is it's going to stitch like the decorative part of the pineapple and sew it down to the fabric. So that requires a brown thread. So we'll switch to that. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my bobbin thread up and hold on to that when it starts, and I'll have just a tidier looking start that way. So I'll let it take just a couple of stitches, and then we'll just go ahead and cut that thread away. So the machine is going to stitch some little X's in the middle of all these areas in the pineapple, and I find because the needle grabs the thread as it goes through all this thick stuff, so as it takes a stitch and cuts, I just reach in there with my scissors and swipe it out, and I'll have less threads to trim later on, I find, if I do it this way. If you don't mind trimming threads, just let it go, but see right there I have one. So there we go, we just have a couple little threads to clean up. And the next step is the placement stitch for the top of the pineapple. So we'll take the brown out and put our water soluble back in. And we'll let the machine do the placement stitch over the top. So there's our placement stitch for the top, and there's my little Kraft Tex pattern. That's where it'll go. And here's my cutout. And I don't know that I mentioned earlier, we actually trace this using a friction pen because they're just wonderful for quilting and sewing. You can erase it. It's an erasable pen, and it'll also iron off. So tracing this is just great because they come in so many colors, and you can see a little bit of red there. And when I'm finished, I'll hit this with the iron and it'll be gone. So we'll give our little pattern a test fit. Looks good. Put some glue on it. Whoop. Make sure you put the glue on the wrong side, not the right side. And then place it right over your stitching, and it should pretty much cover up your stitching. You might see a little bit peeking out here and there, but for the most part it will cover it up. And then we're going to put in a green thread to stitch the top of my pineapple. All right, so the last step is to put the brown back in, and it'll stitch a little satin area right here to cover up the between the top and the bottom of the pineapple. And again, I do like to bring my bobbin up. So there's our cute little pineapple made with Kraft Tex. So I decided to go ahead and stitch up my little card so you can see what I was referring to when I said I wanted to make this into a card. So I purchased these at a craft store, and they're cards that already have the cutout in them, and they also had envelopes. And I just cut my little yellow piece of fabric slightly bigger than the opening, and I actually fused it to the inside using like a steam seam or some type of heat and bond. And then I fused this green over the top and put some yellow thread in my needle, and I did a pretty decorative stitch around the outside. So it's ready to use as a greeting card. So this is a Kraft Tex one, and then this is one of my favorite ones from our Hoop Club. This is our little frog, and this is the applique one. And I used a different decorative stitch on this one, and I fused a print on the inside too. And just some other ideas you can do with them. This is our large Kraft Tex applique, and here's our little frog. And I put him on the back of stretched him on a frame, canvas frame. So very cute, very versatile, and we're looking forward to see what you do with your little designs.